Thank you, everyone, for joining our latest drop-in session. It's lovely to have you here. If you are new, as I was saying, as some of you were joining us, you're welcome to have camera on. But you are just as welcome to have camera off. Do be aware, if it makes it easier for you to follow this in any way, there is the Zoom closed captioning that you can see down below. Also, if you want to, you can put your name, you can put your company, you can put a mysterious name that you wish to be known on this call to never, that we all have to wonder and guess at. It's entirely up to you. The other thing to be aware of is, as well as being recorded, we block this in for an hour. It rarely takes the full hour. Usually ends by about 1:45, but you don't have to tell anyone. Okay, so your diary says you have to be on this call for an hour. How you use that 15 or so minutes is entirely up to you. If you're hiding from your kids, your family, or your cats, stay where you are. If you want to go out and soak up some sunshine, that's entirely up to you. And this is a session that, as we're going through, one, as we start talking, I want you to really feel encouraged and nay, exhorted to put comments in, because particularly as we start the chat with Sue, as quickly as possible, we want this to be a conversation. You'll also see, as I'm talking about things, Karen will be dropping links to things. The purpose of these drop-in sessions, if you are new to them, is this is a chance, if we think about the things that we do online now, we have things like our festival and working lunches. These are more formal things where we bring together a panel to talk about what is best practice, much more sort of finished products to talk about what works and what doesn't work. We wanted something that was more about work in progress, and for us to talk to you about what's coming up, but to hear from you what are problems and issues and things that you're doing. This has evolved really under Karen's guidance into, let's focus. I'll do my happy clappy thing at the start to try and talk to you about, here's what's coming up that you might not know is coming up on the Tech Talent Charter. Then we'll go into a slightly deeper dive. This idea of having this deeper dive is not to put the finished product, but to actually start kicking around some ideas of works in progress. So while I'm definitely going to be drawing Sue into that conversation, as it goes on, please feel free to drop in comments that you have questions for Sue, or if you're doing things within your company, if you have insights to share, if you've got problem spaces. And then we'll get to a point where I even say, jump in, be part of the conversation. Is there anything else that anyone else is doing that we want to talk about, kick around, etc.? This is then recorded and can be shared after. As we're going through, you might start thinking, oh my God, if they've talked about this, I'd love to hear about another topic. Do flag those up. But what we'll do, this should feel a natural conversation. If we reach that end of the conversation, wherever that happens, we will stop. I know everybody has busy lives. People have school runs. They have things to do. We'll keep this short and sharp to try and make use for you. Right. So Tech Talent Charter. If this is your first session, if you're not sure what's coming up, things to be aware of that are coming up. We're really excited on the 13th of July. What we've been hearing from a lot of our signatories is people really want to know and understand more about neurodiversity. So we did have a hackathon topic then, so we have some materials in our open playbook on this, but we're really excited that we're going to be able to be working with one of the big players in the field, Auticon. And this is going to be an awareness raising session where we'll hear from Auticon about how can we get better as employers, as managers, to really make this inclusive and get the very best and give the very best for people who are neurodivergent. So if you're interested in that, there are still places you can sign up for that. Then going later in July, we are having one of these drop-in sessions. What I love is this ongoing conversation, deeper and deeper conversations we've been having around data. And what we have is a really interesting discussion that's happening around from Lloyds Bank, where they've gone the next level thinking about data, and they're starting to think from a systems analysis rather than just looking at our recruitment policy, recruitment numbers, looking at our promotion. How can we use the very best in thinking in terms of data analytics and systems thinking to really unpick what's working, what's not working within our systems of that whole employee life cycle in trying to increase the inclusion and diversity of our tech? Really interesting topic. What we have then in August is we're going to be talking about allyship. You know, this is something we want to always look at. There's always that big question of, I'm not an underrepresented group. I want to be a better ally. How can we help our colleagues, our middle managers, really get better, more effective, more impactful in terms of allyship? And then in September, we're looking at, you know, we're always thinking about alternate routes into tech. One of the things that we've heard from companies that is really, really effective, but not always easy to do, is returnships. All right. These are our techie people who have vanished for any number of reasons. How can we develop the best way of bringing them back and putting them into the workplace? So if you're interested in any of those, please do sign up for those. If you're looking for other topics, if you're thinking of other topics you'd like to hear about or you'd like to join us to talk about, please let us know. Karen will be reaching out. You can always reach out to Karen on those. Data, we're nearly to that time of year. Behind the scenes, the team are gearing ourselves up to start doing the data gathering for our next annual report. This is an exciting time because this report and the benchmarking tools that arise from that are really becoming the crown jewels of what we do. If you've not looked or you've not actually been able to look at our annual report and the benchmarking tools from last year, please have a look. This is a chance for you to think about the whole of our ecosystem of what's working, what's not working, where are the stats for gender and ethnicity, and how do you compare with companies of your size, of your sector. We also have some regional data. We know what in our report, the top strategies, the most impactful strategies from our most gender diverse companies, from our most ethnically diverse companies, all those sorts of bits and pieces. So that comes from our data. Now, if you're new to the process or found last year's process really challenging, don't worry, we have sessions coming that you can sign up like this, where whoever's in charge of doing your data can drop in and get some help. How do I do that? Do you mean that by this question, etc.? So expect to hear from us over the coming weeks that the data gathering is coming, but we're here to help and do that with you all along the way to make sure that that's as smooth a process as possible so we can land the next exciting report in your labs. Okay, this is where I pause and say, Karen, have I forgotten anything that you're thinking? Damn it, Debbie said she'd talk about this and she forgot.
No, that's all. But I would say that if you've got any questions about data and you feel like this coming to the drop-in isn't quite the right fit for you, or you've got someone else then that would like to sort of talk about things, just drop me an email. We can talk about sort of data over email as well. So there's an option for that.
And if you're worrying that something's come into your inbox, it hasn't yet. But I'm hoping we're also getting some more sophisticated emails. This blast of we're coming, we're here, where's our data, are a thing of the past. Karen, Charles, Liz have come up with a much more sophisticated system where you should get some comms that are more direct at you and how we can help you to make this happen. Right. Okay, so today you've gathered because you are in an organization that either has a mentorship program that you'd like to make better, or you're thinking about doing something in the space. And so what we've done is to bring Sue, and Sue, you and I have known each other since the early days of Tech Talent Charter. And as well as talking about mentorship, I want to sing your praises for a second. So you'd never introduce yourself this way. So I'm going to do it. Listen, if you've been in the UK and you're in the tech and diversity space, everybody knows about Ada Lovelace Day, right? And it's sort of, we kind of have this sense of Ada Lovelace Day has always been around. Well, Ada Lovelace Day, Ada Lovelace was a real person. So I can't say that Sue was responsible for the creation of Ada Lovelace back in the 19th century. But what we do know is that there was a person, Sue woke up and realized that we had this great role model and really was the galvanizing force back in 2009. So if you and your company are celebrating Ada Lovelace Day in any way, shape, or form, in real life events or on online, you're doing that due to the pioneering efforts that Sue did when really you were a one-woman band for a while, getting and banging this drum and doing that. So we've loved, I've loved getting to meet you. I've loved having you as a signatory. I've loved working with you, but I'm also really excited to have you on the thing. So Sue, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, Ada Lovelace Day is 11th of October this year. So if you're going to plan any kind of event, then please do let me know. But yeah, no, it's great to be here, and I'm really excited to be talking about mentoring, because that's been my focus for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because mentoring as an idea and as an initiative has been around for a while, but it's been quite hit and miss. And it's just if I advertise and do it, things are done. But I think people like yourself and some of the companies that you're working with are getting a more sophisticated, nuanced idea. So let's start back from first principles. So if I'm thinking from a hard pragmatic, if you're having to sell into me as a tough, don't really get this EDI malarkey, and I'm going to be asked to put some resource into setting up a mentorship program, damn it, what is the business problem? What is the business case? What's the benefit for us as a company in setting up mentorships within the organization?
Okay, so there's a couple of really important aspects to the mentoring piece. And the first one is looking at the mentees, the people who are receiving the mentoring. And I think it's fairly well established that when you have new employees coming, particularly younger employees, graduates maybe, that having someone to help them adjust, help them learn how the business works, help them learn how their industry works, and help develop some of their soft skills is super important. Soft skills especially. I talk to a lot of managers, and I do hear a lot of people say, just really struggling to develop soft skills of our junior employees because they're not necessarily coming in with them. And I think there's lots of very interesting reasons why that might be, but mentoring is a way to sort of fill that gap and support your younger employees so that they can kind of settle into their role, come up to speed much faster than they otherwise would, and feel supported. So one of the key things that younger employees are looking at now, excuse me, is they're really sort of thinking about how am I going to be supported? What do I get from the company that I'm working at? Why should I pick this company over that one? Especially in the moment, we're in a little bit of a sort of employees market. And providing mentoring is a really good way to kind of stand out in that recruitment market.
Can I comment on that just to say, Sue, that we hear that for the research, that salary is just one of the things that people are thinking about in this recruitment pool, where you're absolutely right. Talent is king or queen right now. And they want to know not just how much you're going to pay me, how are you going to grow me? So that's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's a lot of, and has been for quite some time, like pre-pandemic, there was some research by Prospects, which is the graduate sort of career services unit. And one of the things they found that graduates were thinking about was things like, how ethical is the company? What is the training and development opportunities? What's the food like in the canteen? Which I love the fact that they're thinking about that kind of stuff, because it is actually, that's about quality of life. But the flip side of mentoring that is much more rarely spoken about is the impact on mentors, and why we need to think about this in a more rounded way. Mentors gain skills as well. They gain leadership skills, they gain communication skills, they gain skills around how to give feedback, how to sort of help with soft skills development. So it's like just the other side of the coin. And that also then helps with retention. And one of the big challenges that we have in STEM is that we lose women mid-career when they should be going into senior roles. And then this actually ties into the issues around the gender pay gap, because we know that one of the reasons that there is a gender pay gap is we have fewer women in senior roles and we have women clustering in the lower paid junior roles. So how are we getting women up that sort of promotion ladder so that they have the leadership skills? Because quite often, you know, I will hear the excuses of, well, you know, we don't have women in leadership roles because, you know, we're not finding they've got the right skills, which is a total cop out. And that really says you're not developing the skills of the women that you have that are coming into that sort of mid-career area.
And so that's okay. So this is really important when I'm making this business case, but also when I'm trying to get the most from my mentoring. So I'm hearing, one, it's going to make me more attractive for the recruitment so I can get more recruits. Two, it's helping getting those recruits then fully up to speed so I get better employees, better return on that recruitment process. But it's one of the reasons I was so keen to talk to you on this is that other side of the equation, you know, that this is, as you said, the real sticking point. If we hear again and again a problem that's coming up, it is finding women and underrepresented people in those mid to senior roles. So if I set up my mentoring program right, I get a win-win. I can be recruiting, I can recruit, I can onboard and grow, but then I'm looking at that grow and retain at that mid-level, which is fantastic. Okay, so I've sold it in at the senior level. They're gung-ho. So all I have to do is just like recruit a few, bang them together, and that works together.
The number of people I've spoken to who said, well, you know, we have mentoring. I was like, hey, how are you doing it? Well, we've got a spreadsheet. It's like, no. Spreadsheets are fantastic. They are not a good mentoring management tool at all. So one of the key things when you're setting up a program is to sort of think, let's go back to basics. We've decided we want mentoring, but what does that mean? Who are we mentoring? Who is going to be mentoring who? Why should we put certain people with certain other people? So we know, for example, that it is more beneficial if you have people who are similar mentoring each other. So women mentoring women, people of color mentoring people of color. There needs to be a level of self-recognition in your mentor. You know, if I am a junior woman and I've just come in, I've maybe sort of 2-3 years experience, you've just employed me and you stick me with a senior man as my mentor, I'm not going to feel like I can speak honestly to that senior male colleague. I'm going to feel kind of maybe a bit overwhelmed. I'm going to sort of self-censor a lot. So it's really about thinking, you know, what is the gap between the mentor and the mentee? You don't want it too large, otherwise it's just not going to work. You need a degree of kind of recognition between mentor and mentee that they have had similar life experiences. So thinking about how this works in terms of perhaps having different schemes, that it's not just one big free-for-all, and thinking about the power dynamics. And this is very important when you're looking at things like reverse mentoring. So that's when you have a junior member of staff mentoring a senior member of staff. And a lot of times I see that described of, well, it allows the young tech-savvy people to teach the old codgers how to use their iPhone. It's like, again, no, that is not what reverse mentoring is about. Reverse mentoring is about transferring sort of intelligence and knowledge about the experiences that young members of staff are having, you know, their cultural experiences, their experiences at work, you know, what's important to them. This is about getting to know your staff, getting to know why they might stay or go, getting to understand the issues they're having on a day-to-day basis. It is not about, you know, teaching white-haired old men how to use an iPhone. I think that's actually quite insulting to anybody who is a man old and has white hair. So some of this is really about what is the mentoring for? How are we going to match people together? What benefits are we going to get for both groups? And then from that, how are we going to structure the program? because in my experience, having a structure to the program, having check-in points, we run surveys, I do monthly webinars with our mentors and mentees, having some structure there, giving them a mentoring plan, helping them understand how to set goals, all of that is essential if you're going to actually have a successful program, because otherwise what happens is that you have two people who have a lovely time having a cup of coffee or a Zoom chat once a month, and who knows if they're actually getting anything from it. It's always nice to make a connection with a colleague, but is it actually fulfilling the goals of the program, of the business, but also is it actually fulfilling the goals of the mentor and the mentee? So there needs to be some support, because for mentors, quite often I get the people saying, well, yeah, I've been a mentor, but I don't really know that I'm any good as a mentor, because I don't really know what I'm doing. And so a bit of support and training for mentors, particularly new mentors, also goes a long way. So it's really about sort of thinking about, okay, what is the structure? What are your KPIs? This is something that we're doing because it's the right thing to do, but it's also something that we can look at and measure, and we can kind of say, how is this working? And then that again allows you to pick up on relationships that aren't working so well. You can rematch and you can tweak that, so that at the end of the day, you have people who have been through this program and come out with the extra skills, with the extra confidence, and you can actually start to measure some of that and see what the impact is beyond the very nice but still anecdotal stories that you'll get from people going, my mentor was amazing. And I think that's kind of like the sort of quick and dirty answer.
Okay, so let me make sure that I've unpacked how that we do. Once you have the buy-in, there's a lot of strategic planning and thought that needs to happen. All right, this is about really ensuring what are the problems we're trying to solve. And I really like the way you talk about what's the value exchange on both sides, and really tackling that, because again, otherwise you get these phrases, reverse mentoring, I've heard about that, let's do that, I'm sure it'll be fine. And it is that sense of, if you really start costing the program, if you cost the amount of time on the people involved, total that up for your company, would you ever spend that much money and just fling the money over the wall and hope for the best? And it's that understanding and the training and structuring. Calling yourself a mentor doesn't make you a mentor, a good or effective mentor. And this reaches into what you're saying about upskilling the mentor as well as the mentees in a really powerful way. And those KPIs and metrics. I mean, is there anything else that you've seen looking across clients? And I'm throwing up into the room again. So if you want to start throwing in some questions, or if you want to start throwing in some observations of what you've seen in your own organization or others, but give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. So are there any things that you've seen companies do that when you work with them just went down really well in terms of mentoring? Or did you see some train wrecks, don't give me company names, but things that just really went wrong that we can sit back and go, super, we're just not going to do that?
Well, I'll start with the bad and the ugly, which is the same thing, which is our mentoring scheme is people email me, I put them in a spreadsheet, I introduce them, I give them a worksheet, and then that's it. And I have had people saying to me, I love mentoring. I have a mentee. I think I have a mentee. I had a mentee, but I haven't heard from her for 6 months. I'm not sure if we're still doing anything together. And that happens when you don't have a kind of handle on who's talking to whom and how often, just throwing people together. I mean, it gets a bit kind of Large Hadron Collider. You can throw particles at each other, but that doesn't mean they're going to actually create anything of value or anything new. From the good side, I had one client that I think did something really, really interesting and really valuable, which was we did a split mentoring program. So they got 50 women from tech roles from inside the business, and they mentored 50 women from the general public, from outside the business. And it was a really nice program. It worked really well. And part of the reason it worked so well was because the mentors really felt that they were giving something back to the community. The mentees were learning something from, and again, they were all quite junior, and this was, you know, all tech roles, so they all felt like they were learning something valuable from the mentors. And for the business, one of the reasons they were doing this was that they are in an industry where they're not traditionally seen as tech employers. So they wanted to do a bit of soft recruitment, or just kind of saying to the world, hey, actually, we do have quite a lot of tech roles here. You might not know it, but, you know, it was a way for them to talk to the wider community. And, you know, so it was kind of part recruitment, part marketing, part CSR. And it was a really, really successful program. And I was really pleased with how that went. So I think there's quite a few different models about where participants come from. So, you know, it can be all internal, it can kind of cross the firewall, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. And it was really nice to see them doing something a little bit different.
And so in terms of looking at that, I'm noticing the question. I'm seeing we have all the great things in place: website, promotion, guidelines, mentoring SMEs. My thing's not going down. So what would be your advice for this question? So it's still not quite what we want.
Yeah, so struggling to get people to sign up. That is not uncommon. This is something that I have been hearing, particularly at this point in time. And I think some of this is pandemic fatigue. I was doing some work with a university earlier this year, and they were really struggling to get the mentors to sign up, and the mentees to sign up. So, you know, it's something I've actually had an issue with this year as well. So I think to some extent we have to say, okay, circumstances are still not back to normal. We are going to have issues. I think so. A corollary to that question was, you know, using National Mentoring Day as the main promotion week, and I think that is something I would look at. That mentoring is a process, and the sign up is a process. You can kind of hang the launch of a mentoring program on a particular week, but it actually takes quite a lot of repetition to get people to sign up. And I would also look at talking to people who aren't signing up and finding out why. Yeah, and exactly. A lot of this is, there are sort of several fallacies that people have. This idea that mentoring is going to take a lot of time. And I saw a survey, and it's like 9% of people said that it took a lot of time, in however they defined that. But when you actually talk to the people who are taking part in mentoring, the time they spend, they feel is worth it. So this idea that it's going to be a time sink is not really true. So I tend to advise mentors that it's going to take an hour or two a month, mentees that it's going to take sort of 3 to 6 hours a month, depending on how engaged they are with it. And I think that's actually quite a reasonable amount of time to ask over a month, for a month, for however long. I think the other issue is that for recruiting mentors is a lot of people think that they don't have the skills. So there's an opportunity there to do, again, I've done this with a few clients, is do some mentor training right at the beginning, maybe even before you do the recruitment, so that you're saying to mentors, okay, this is what it's going to take to be a mentor. Because so often, particularly women, are like, you know, no, I don't have the skills, I've never been a mentor before, I don't know if I can do it. And in fact, that was, you know, 2 years ago when I started our mentoring program early 2020, just in time for the pandemic to kick off. And I myself personally was like, well, I'll run this, but no one's going to want me as a mentor. And I ended up with 2 mentees, and they're fabulous. And one of them, actually, we've just come to the end of our 2nd year. And I have learned so much myself about me, about being a mentor, about the experiences that I bring to the table that I would never have guessed would be useful 2 years ago. So there is a process to go through with mentors, especially about this is how we do it. And I think with the mentees, you know, some of this is about expectation, that they don't necessarily understand what this is going to involve. So there's maybe a little bit more communications work that can be done to help.
And I think it's really important what you said, to get a bit of that user research to understand what the real problem is. It the confidence issue? Is it the time issue in terms of doing that? And I think also what you were saying, what I hear is if this has been going on for a while, is to use some of that storytelling as well of what that good looks like. And I wonder, when whoever asked the question, when you said there wasn't much sign up, was that on the mentee or the mentor side of things? Whoever said they were struggling to get buy-in on that?
So that was Mick. Yeah.
Just finding the mute button. Yeah, it was me. All the stuff is fantastic and mirrors what we do. It's just getting the impetus. I think if we could get some big hitters showing that we're doing mentoring, it's really working for me. All our execs are allocated mentors. It's just getting people to shout about it and get. I think a lot of informal mentoring is going on using the methodologies, but like any business, we want to sort of measure success because we're putting time and effort into providing the resources. So it's just any really funky, snazzy ways of advertising it. We hook onto National Mentoring Day, which is a great day. We have done some stuff with diversity about Ada Lovelace Day as well, but any ideas would be gratefully received. It's on both ends. We're really weak on reverse mentoring as well. I don't think we hardly do any of that, which is a shame because it's a fantastic free resource.
Okay. I mean, Sue, do you want to comment any more on that in terms of other ways of sort of getting the buy-in?
I think a lot of this is about revisiting your communications and making sure that you're answering people's questions before they ask them. And it's always good to get people to talk about their experience, both the mentors and the mentees. So if you can get sort of like almost testimonials, then that should help. But sometimes this is about trying to work out where the fear is. So a lot of the barriers that people have towards engaging with these things is fear of public humiliation. So what is it that they're scared of? And then answer those questions.
Super. Okay, other end of the spectrum, it's talking about if I'm really just starting out. So there's a question here, I think from you, Louise, saying if it's absolutely new, never done that, some buy-in, good. So there's the good news. And it's internally, is it internal and external? What do you think in terms of starting out, Sue?
Always comes back to what is it that you want to do? And another question that's important, which is how big is your company? So for smaller companies, having an internal external program is beneficial, because if you are a small company, then there is the issue with everybody knowing everyone else, and it can then get a little bit awkward if it turns out that your mentor is your boss's bestie. So that there's a few other questions I'd ask there around kind of, what is the aim for this? Because starting off with an internal program, if you're small, can be challenging. If you're a much bigger company, it can be easier. But then if you have other business goals you're trying to meet with the mentoring, then externally there can be some real wins there in terms of bringing external expertise in, making it a richer program. So unfortunately, I don't think there's like a blanket answer to that. That's something where, I'd love to chat later and maybe sort of give you a hand working out what that would be, because it really would depend on the details of the situation.
And then Claire, you always have really practical questions. I like your questions because there's always something we can really dig in quickly. So the practical points, time scale on the mentorship, is it just going on or is it time frame? Do we box it in time or just launch them and wait to see what arrives at shore?
I'm a big fan of having a set time frame. It gives people expectations, it gives them clarity, and it also gives you some key opportunities to check in with them and see what's going on. So, you got your first month, your 30-day check-in. Are things going all right? Do you want a new mentor? Is the relationship working? Midpoint check-in. How are things going? Are you making progress towards your goals? Do you need to change your goals? And then because you know the end point, you can have it's all over. Thank you very much. How did you get on? Would you like to carry this on? And so then you do have the opportunity to continue it, but it also gives people a sense of like, okay, well, I've done this year or 6 months with this mentor, and maybe I would like another 6 months or another year with another mentor, or maybe we're getting on so fabulously that we want to carry this on. But because you have a clear endpoint, you can ask that question and you get more clarity. I think what happens with open-ended relationships is they fizzle out. And that's ultimately unsatisfying for everyone, because no one wants to feel like, oh gosh, I should have emailed my mentor or my mentee by now, and I haven't, and now I feel embarrassed, and now 6 months have gone past and I can't possibly email them again, because that would be humiliating. You don't have any risk of that kind of fizzle at the end. So I always say, pick a specific time frame. I personally think that either 6 months or a year is good. I think a year, depending on so a year for very junior staff can feel a little long. Sometimes 6 months, if you're talking about, new graduates, first 2-3 years of their career, give them 6 months. If you're talking kind of a more mid-career women, they are going to get their teeth into a year-long program with the potential for renewal. Also about measures of success. I think
because you've got that in KPIs. So Coco is building on Claire's success in KPIs.
Success in KPIs. So for me, the key KPI, if you like, is, did the mentor and mentee get anything out of it? So for this, we use surveys. When we're measuring the health of the mentoring program as it goes along, we're looking at how many mentoring sessions have they had, how many hours have they been meeting, how many messages have they sent, how many. So I use an online platform, so people, it's not in person necessarily, people can be anywhere, but that does measure things like how much time have they spent logged in, how much of their mentoring plan, so we break it all out into tasks, how much of that has all been ticked off. So you can look at engagement on a month-to-month basis, which does then also allow you to kind of check in with pairs that have not engaged at all. And sometimes that's because they've taken it off platform, which is understandable, although not particularly helpful. And sometimes it's because circumstances have changed, and particularly, people's personal circumstances at the moment are very fluid. People catch COVID. As women, sometimes we get pregnant. Life happens, things change. And so that allows you to keep an eye on that and be able to say, okay, so, we'll close this mentoring partnership down because things have changed, things have happened. So for me, though, the key thing is how satisfied people are. And that's something we measure on a couple of surveys, and particularly the final survey. And we basically ask people, are you very unsatisfied, satisfied, either way, etc. So that we get a sense of how people are ending the program. And so I think that really is important. When you're doing an internal program, you can also hook this data into your HR data. So you can look at things like promotions. So we know that mentoring increases promotion rates for mentors. It's a 6-time higher promotion rate. For mentees, it's a 5-time higher promotion rate. And this came from a study from Sun Microsystems a while back. So you can start to actually hook some of that activity into, are you seeing promotions? What about retention?
Yeah.
So one of the big things with replacing one member of staff, ACAS did a study a couple of years ago, and it's cost £30,000 to replace a single member of staff, not because of the cost of recruitment, but because of lost productivity as the new employee comes up to speed. So then you have KPIs around, okay, can we retain staff for longer? Are our staff happier? Are they performing better? Are we actually, when we're onboarding with a mentorship program, are we looking at a faster onboarding process so that people are up to speed and we're not losing money on lost productivity? So that all depends on what kind of data you can pull out of HR. And how you can knit that together with the data that you've got from your mentoring program. But there are some really rich ways you can pull that data together to give you a sense of how effective the mentoring program is being, and then then you can start to look at tweaking it around the edges to make it more effective.
Super. And so looking back on the timings of things, Claire, thanks for sharing. And I like the idea of you break down, there's a whole month for setup, a whole month for ending it with the 6 month, which is an interesting. Alana, you mentioned that went well the first time and the second one is not without its challenges. I love that. That's a wonderful, mysterious thing that makes you lean and go, really interesting. Do you want to share what those are, or would you like to leave us with that sense of mystery?
No, I'm happy to shine a little bit of light on that. So the learnings shared from the first round of mentoring last year, I thought were really helpful. They were very rich explanations around some of the challenges, i.e. scheduling conflicts, different expectations about what was to be, you know, frankly, the goal of the mentoring. And, you know, none of it was like overly critical towards individuals. It was just expectations and communication, you know, perhaps not being aligned to begin with, and we know how that goes.
Yeah.
So it was great feedback, and I thought would set us up with really good success for this year. But I may be a little bit naive because what I forget is people are still human. So you can share feedback and you can hear it, you know, when you start a program, but then somewhere along the way, people still end up repeating these same really human mistakes. You know, the thing that for me stuck out as being an obvious challenge was actually still scheduling. So we touched base with everyone that was, you know, a mentee and mentor in May. And by that point, we thought we'd given sufficient time for everyone to have at least one meeting, you know, to kick it off. And much to my surprise, the majority of people still hadn't been able to even have a meeting, not even a, you know, 30 minutes, very informal, nice to meet you, you know, this is my name, and, you know, very casual. Even that hadn't been feasible with the time that we had given. So I can only imagine that the more senior, you know, people within the mentorship dynamic were struggling from a time point of view, you know, to find that time to be able to allocate. And
it feels like that's getting worse. You know, everyone's talking about as the world gets back to normal, whatever that means. Pressures and time have shot through the roof. If what I'm hearing a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, so if this makes you feel any better, I've done 2 public-facing mentoring programs last year and this year, and this year's has had a far higher dropout rate, and it is all down to people catching COVID or not having time.
And then there's the practical question. Claire, own your spreadsheet. All right, just own your spreadsheet. If you're using a spreadsheet, you can take what Sue said, but going on. Platforms, I mean, has anyone got anything else on Talent Marketplace? And let me throw that open to the wider group. Sue, you can talk about your platform. And Sue, do you mind putting your email into the chat? So if anybody wants to follow up on that. So has anybody come across platforms very useful, not so useful? Okay, so Claire, that's one we're going to have to throw out and ask some other questions. But I think, Sue, probably you'll be able to talk to Claire about, you know, how you've done what you've seen on those things. Yeah.
So we use the Kronos platform. It is definitely not the cheapest, but it is very fully featured. It has a lot of analytics, and I have enjoyed working with Kronos over the last 3 years. They've been very, very responsive, generally speaking. It's quite a nuanced platform. So you set up a profile, you can actually, you can customize the profile questions that you're asking, and then the profile answers are used in the matching algorithm. You can do hand matching, you can do algorithmic matching, and then it automatically creates a mentoring plan that the users can then edit themselves. You can put your own tasks in. And it automatically logs. So it's got built-in video conferencing, or it's got built-in connections with things like Google Meet and Zoom and that kind of stuff as well. So it does log the time that people are spending actually talking, and it's got inbuilt messaging, it's got articles and Q&As and all sorts of other events, all sorts of stuff. So it's quite fully featured. I did a lot of looking at mentoring platforms, and I have noticed actually there's been a bit of an explosion of them in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So I've not looked at any of the newer ones, but I've been very happy with Kronos. I think the key thing though, again, is just like, how many people are you putting through it? You know, what's your budget on this? What kind of data do you need? Where could you get it from? So I think it would be possible to marry a spreadsheet with other tools and have a structure that you create, and to create a standard plan that you give people, and to use something like, you know, a mailing list provider, so that you're sending out timed emails. So after 30 days of, or on a certain date, you can send everybody the email saying, hey, go to here and fill in our survey. So then you can use like, Google surveys or Jotform or whatever. So you could actually put together a lot of that functionality much more cheaply from individual tools. It's just a matter of having that structure and knowing what it is that you are trying to ask people. And the one thing that I would like to see someone do, or would like to do with someone, is actually look at mentoring as part of a broader skills acquisition program. So actually then really looking at things like, goal setting. So I teach goal setting, I teach habits. I talk about getting the most out of mentoring. So that is mainly around deep listening and self-reflection, and actually building that into the program then kind of helps everybody to sort of upskill. But you can actually do all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be live webinars. You can actually create all of this sort of stuff in the sort of things like, Teachery or what have you, or these e-learning platforms. So it would absolutely be possible to do this kind of rich mentoring, upskilling environment from different tools that you kind of personally fit together, rather than going with something like Cronus, which, like I said, is not very cheap.
I have a weird, for everyone, my backdrop looks the same as I always do, but I'm actually out in the wild. I'm working from Edinburgh in offices at Lloyds Bank, and I've just found out that someone has also now booked this room. And as I'm the guest, I may have to jump soon. That doesn't mean you can't carry on. Karen's been prepped on this. I'm very sorry. I think we have one last line manager question that I'll leave you with, but I've got to go. They look very senior out there, and I don't want to get anyone in trouble. So Sue, I'm going to say to you, we'll go for the last question and Karen can finish up. But Sue, thank you. I hope that you found it useful. I would say to everyone, highly want to recommend Sue, her work, and remember her when you're doing Ada Lovelace Day. Karen, if I hand off to you, I go now?
Yes, Sue.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Excellent. So yeah, if we just pick up that question about line managers as mentors, personally, bad idea. I think this is one of the reasons that why small companies have problems, is because if your line manager is your mentor, who do you talk to about problems with your line manager? A big part of mentoring, it's not really about hard skills, that's training. Mentoring is about interpersonal relationships, and one of the main interpersonal relationships that you are having to navigate as a mentee is with your line manager. So there are some very strong reasons why there shouldn't be that kind of existing relationship between a mentee and a mentor. I mean, hilariously, Cronus, actually, I didn't realize I had two people who came into our spring cohort, and one was the PhD supervisor of the other. And I had no idea, because this was not something they had flagged to me. And the system just kind of went, oh, these two look like a good fit. I got a little kind of message going, she's my PhD, she's a supervisor. Is this okay? Like, no. We will fix that. So yeah, that's normally a bad idea. And as for, if I can quickly answer, mentor, coach, and sponsor. These are three different roles. I think coaching and mentoring sometimes get kind of smooshed together a little bit, but they are quite different. Mentoring is much more about coming from the mentor's experience and using those experiences to help the mentee understand their situation and what they can do. It's driven by the mentee, but it is a much more sort of, there's less training and it's a little bit more informal. Coaching is a very specific sort of advice giving and supportive, almost therapeutic kind of relationship. It's almost counselling, but for a specific issue or for a career or what have you. So coaches tend to have more training than mentors. And a sponsor is someone who is specifically putting their protege forward and saying, yeah, they should be in this meeting, or you should go for that role, or I'd like to recommend them for this award. So I think they are 3 different roles, and no one person should be trying to do all 3. I think then you start to get into conflicts of interest. If you are a mentor and you're also expected to be championing your mentee in the workplace, then there is too much opportunity there for a conflict of interest, and I think that does need to be split out. And I think as well, for one person to be doing all of that work is also quite a big ask, as well as it being uncomfortable for the mentee for one person to be in charge of all of that work on the future of their career.
A variety of experience that those 3 people could bring to you as well. Like, that's such an opportunity to be able to gain more from your organisation. We've just got a couple more minutes. Is there anyone that has any other questions that they would desperately like to ask? No? Okay. Well, that's perfect. Thank you so much. This session has been recorded, so if there was something that you thought, oh, I've missed that, it will be on our YouTube channel next week, so you sort of can catch up on any bits that you didn't manage to note down. Thank you so much, Sue, for joining us. As Debbie said, like, we're so pleased to have you. Sue's emails are in the chat, so if you want to connect about how to kind of get support, use the platform, move forward, and sort of get her experience in, and please do reach out. Okay, well, it's wonderful to see you all. Do sign up to next month's session, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me, Karen. And if anybody wants to get in touch, I'd be more than happy to help you with either training or consulting or anything else that I can help you with. So please do reach out.